Welcome to the mystery room. I'm Abby.
Oh, and I'm Shannon.
We've
started this episode a little bit later than usual tonight.
Still not very well, but we are...
On the alcohol tonight.
Yeah. So, well, Shannon's on the gin.
Because Abby's on the red wine, and it's dirty.
It's the only wine we had in the house, and due to the illnesses, couldn't really be bothered to go out and get another bottle. So I thought I may as well just have what's in the house, utilise. So I have Shiraz by Stoneberg. It's left over from Christmas. It is nice. It is very nice.
Apparently it's perfect with barbecued ribs or a heavy vegetable stew.
Well, I'm just drinking it, so I don't plan to put it with my food.
And I'm on the gin. Cotswolds gin. It's a Christmas limited edition one. I've got a few frozen raspberries in there and ginger ale because I don't like tonic. Tonic is minging. But did you know that people who like gin and tonic are more likely to have psychopathic tendencies?
So me.
Yeah, so I'm going to move out, I am, because I'm scared of you now.
So for today's case...
I do feel like you have to be a bit of a psycho to like tonic. I just think it's horrible.
I don't know why everyone has such a big
It's so
thing against tonic.
dry.
No, it's not. I find it more refreshing, if anything.
Oh, no.
Like, I know that gin can be quite... Some gins can be quite sweet, and I think tonic adds that bit of, oomph to it. Like...
No, I like sweet things.
I don't know. Then it makes it too sweet for me. I don't know. Yeah, it's just me.
Maybe, I don't
Maybe
know.
I'll put a poll on Spotify. Who prefers gin and tonic or gin and lemonade? I'd love to see that.
Yeah, same.
Okay.
Hopefully lemonade rules.
No. To be fair, I do speak to a lot of people who do prefer lemonade. So
I prefer a fruity gin as well than
Yeah.
like just bog standard gin.
Yeah.
Because that just brings back really horrible memories from house parties and... Yeah. Okay, let's move on
Anyway,
because
we don't want to gross out the listeners.
now I'm mixing alcohol and milk. So let's move on.
Okay. So obviously you could probably hear I'm still not very well. I'm just a bit bunged up. Shannon is luckily on the mend. Good for you.
Oh, I am so much better now. I am
Yeah.
annoying. I am back to my loud self. I've got my voice back. I'm ready to go.
Yeah. Yes. So I'm glad one of us is. Actually, I'm not too bad. It's just all in my head. But anyway. So
She's milking it. She's getting out the cooking.
I'm gonna...
Carry on now.
Just going to cut off Shannon there and crack on with the case. On December 26th, 1996, at 5:52am, Patsy Ramsey called 911 to report her daughter missing from their stately home on 15th Street in Boulder, Colorado, after she found a 2.5-page ransom note on the kitchen staircase demanding $118,000. At 1pm the same day, her body was discovered by her father, John, in the basement of the family home. Over 26 years later, no arrests have ever been made, and the killer has gone undiscovered for nearly 3 decades. Her murder has become one of the most famous police investigations in America.
So before we dive into today's case, let's talk about who JonBenet was. Named after her father, JonBenet Ramsey, and her mother, Patricia, who is also referred to as Patsy. JonBenet Ramsey was a 6-year-old beauty queen. She was born on the 6th of August 1990 in Atlanta, Georgia. She had an older brother called Burke, who was 9 at the time of her murder. She was an outgoing young girl who enjoyed being in the spotlight, with bouncy blonde hair and her beautiful smile. She had already won several pageant titles by the age of 6. She was doted on by her parents, and JonBenet had everything she needed to live a comfortable life. In 1991, the family moved to Boulder, Colorado, where JonBenet became chief executive of a computer company, and JonBenet attended High Peaks Elementary School. JonBenet won her first beauty pageant at the age of 4, winning the Colorado State All-Star Pageant. Due to how young she was, there is not a lot of information out there about her.
The early hours of December 26th, at around 5:52am, Patricia Ramsey made the call to 911 to report JonBenet missing. She had found a 2.5-page long handwritten ransom note addressed to JonBenet, claiming that his daughter had been kidnapped by a group of individuals. This group demanded a ransom note of $118,000. We will include a snippet of the letter, but we won't read the whole thing because it is very long. But we will include a picture of the note on Instagram so you can read the whole thing for yourself if you want.
So the letter said, you'll withdraw $118,000 from your account. $100,000 will be paid in $100 bills and the remaining $18,000 in $20 bills. Make sure that you bring an adequate size attaché to the bank. When you get home, you will put the money in a brown paper bag. I will call you between 8 and 10 a.m. tomorrow to instruct you on a delivery. The delivery will be exhausting, so I advise you be rested. If we monitor you getting the money early, we might call you early to arrange an earlier delivery of the money, and hence an earlier delivery pickup of your daughter.
Okay, so I think I just want to further this on because I don't think we mentioned this as we go on, but they don't receive a call between 8 and 10 a.m. So it kind of makes this whole thing a bit suspicious. Like, if they were that desperate to get the money, they would have made that call between 8 a.m. and 10 a.m. But they didn't.
That's a lot of money to ask for.
It is, but at the same time,
I'm telling you, if I was holding someone ransom and I wanted that sort of money, I'd be making that call.
Yeah, exactly. But also, if you were gonna ask for a lot of money, I think you'd go a bit more than 118,000. Like, why not go 1 million?
Yeah, true. Especially like if they know
But
she's like
they're a very wealthy family.
Yeah, like
very wealthy.
That's what I mean. Like, if they know the family and they know, like, they've seen a little girl at pageants or something like that, then they probably think, oh yeah, they've got a lot of money.
Yeah.
So let's take them for a lot more.
Exactly. Why 118,000?
I'll still be calling for that money.
Well, exactly. I know, but I just think the amount just says a lot in itself. Like, I don't know. I just think if you were going to ask for a lot of money, you would ask for more than 118,000 because it's very precise as well. 118,000.
Yeah, like usually don't most people like round it up or down.
Yeah.
Like 118,000.
Yeah. And we will get into
it's a down payment for something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe that's exactly how much they're missing.
Also, why ask for $100, like 100,000 in $100 bills and the remaining 18,000 in $20 bills?
That is going to be a big hefty envelope. Just write me a check.
Yeah. Or like, I don't know. It's just weird. It's very weird.
JonBenet pointed out that this was nearly the exact amount he had received from his Christmas bonus the year before. The only people to have known to have been in the house that night of the murder was Patsy, JonBenet and Burke. When Patsy made the call to 911, officers were at the house within 3 minutes. Once they arrived, they conducted a search of the house, but they didn't find any signs of forced entry. One of the officers, Rick French, went to the basement and came to a door with a wooden latch. He then paused for a moment and then just walked away without even opening it. Now, his explanation later on for this was that he was looking for an exit route the suspect may have taken, which the peg outside the door would have ruled out. With their daughter still missing, John arranged to pay the ransom. The odd thing about this was the family received no further instructions on what to do, and no one ever attempted to claim the ransom money.
Which kind of makes what we were talking about earlier. It just...
Like, if that's the exact amount of money that he got in his Christmas bonus, like, someone must really know, like, the family.
Yeah.
However, at 1 p.m, a detective asked JonBenet Ramsey and Fleet White, who was a friend of the family, to search the house. They started their search in the basement of the home. When they both went down, John opened the latch door, which Detective French overlooked, and to his shock, he found JonBenet's lifeless body in one of the rooms. Her mouth was covered with duct tape, and nylon cord was found around her wrists and neck, and her torso was covered in a white blanket. John picked up his daughter's limp body and carried her upstairs. Okay, so this really annoys me, because why is he tampering with the crime scene?
That's exactly what they go on to say.
Like, he's literally just moved all the evidence out. Like, do people not... I mean, like, this is quite an earlier case. Like, it's only in the 1990s. Like, surely they know a lot more about DNA and crime scene examinations by then.
Yeah.
Like, this is a big no-no.
I know, exactly.
This is like my forensic science degree coming out of me now.
I know. It really comes in handy when we're doing these, these podcasts.
It really, really annoys me how they like... And I don't know, things like this, like... Most people know not to touch a crime scene, so it just... A lot of alarm bells are ringing.
Yeah. The thing I can sort of sympathise with is obviously that's his daughter he's just found, and maybe in that moment he didn't think that, oh God, I'm tampering with a crime scene.
Was there no police there when they searched?
Yes, but they were upstairs. Like, at
But this is the thing, so why was the family asked to search the house? Like, that should have been police. Like, the house basically should have been cordoned off. The family shouldn't even be in the house. They should be doing an extensive search off the property. They shouldn't go, excuse me, mate, can you and your friend just help us with our search? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
That is shocking, police work.
But I thought of this. Maybe it's because they were waiting for a phone call from the people who demanded the ransom. So if they did call back on the phone, then the family would answer the phone. Like, they'd be there to answer the phone.
But I'm sure they can set that sort of thing up anywhere. I'm sure they had mobile phones back in the 1990s.
It's 96. I don't know.
96. Yeah, surely. Yeah, because
those thick, chunky.
Yeah, like satellite phones.
But then another thing is, detective moved her body again. Yeah.
Why?
I don't know. It's so
I'm not
weird.
going to lie to you. I honestly think if I walked into a room and I saw like a family member's dead body, I wouldn't be able to touch it.
No.
Like, I wouldn't be able to touch it. I wouldn't be able to pick it up. I wouldn't be able to move it. I'd be like on the floor crying.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's very true.
I just wouldn't be able to touch it. I just think that'd be like too much. I don't know. Everyone's different in these sort of situations, and it's it's like one of them like flight or fight modes, isn't it? Really.
Everyone would act differently to seeing. Like,
so yeah, if like I could sit there and go, I wouldn't do that, but no one knows.
So once her body had been found, an autopsy was carried out, and the autopsy showed that JonBenet was strangled and her skull fractured. Her official cause of death was strangulation by a garrote. Now, I did not know what a garrote was, so I did have to Google it, and it was a weapon that was used in medieval times. It can be made with like a chain or rope, but after looking at a picture of it still really didn't make much sense to me as to how like they used this to strangle someone. Have a look for yourself and see what you think. It looks like a very weird weapon, but anyway.
Can I ask a question? So, obviously, we've Googled what a garrote is.
Yeah.
And I don't understand, like, did the killer bring it with them? Or was it already in the house? I don't understand.
It's a very odd thing in the 1990s to strangle someone with.
It's like something from, like, basically being crucified. That's kind of what it looks like.
It was used as a torture weapon.
But I'm just like, what, is someone just walking around with one of these?
I know.
I feel like
honestly,
it's a very specific torture and murder weapon. I just feel like
so to our listeners, if you do Google this, you'll see exactly what we mean by this, because it's not something that someone usually strangles someone with.
I mean, it's not really something someone should have in their house or in their possession. It's like,
I know.
Surely no one just thought, I'm going to take this out with me today. Like,
obviously,
for this, it's like, if there was an intruder, it's like they brought it with them in the intent to kill someone. Like, you don't just bring that to, kidnap someone.
No, yeah. Although there was no signs of rape, sexual abuse couldn't be ruled out. This was because no semen had been found, but there was evidence of vaginal injury. The pathologist has said that her vaginal region had been wiped with a cloth. The autopsy also revealed a fruit or vegetable material in JonBenet's stomach, which may have represented pineapple. In photos taken on the day of the discovery of her body, They showed a bowl of pineapple with a spoon in it on the kitchen table. However, neither of her parents remember putting this bowl on the table or JonBenet ever eating it. It was later reported that Burke's fingerprints were found on the bowl. However, the parents said that Burke always slept through the night. This leads to a theory which was going around, that JonBenet had taken some pineapple that Burke was eating, which led to him losing his temper and killing JonBenet. So, leading on from that, let's talk a bit about JonBenet's brother, Burke.
So, Burke, he was only 9 at the time of JonBenet's murder. Not much is known about Burke at the time, other than the fact he was known to have a temper, and once he had hit his sister with a golf club. 2 weeks after JonBenet was killed, Burke was interviewed. In this interview, Burke was very playful and showed no indication that he'd been through any trauma. When asked how things were at home, Burke says, and I quote, "I'm basically just going on with my life." He was also asked how he thought she died, to which he did a physical demonstration on how he thinks she was killed, by portraying someone stabbing or hitting JonBenet. This troubled investigators. Burke, 6 years ago, broke his silence since his interview after the death of his sister. He said that there was never any abuse from Patsy. I've done it again.
Is there a P from last
I've done it again. Patsy or John, and they lived a very happy life together.
Yeah. So I just want to first of all start off by saying that the physical demonstration, if you watched it
Together.
Yeah. So I just want to first of all start off by saying that the physical demonstration, if you watched it, it kind of like weirded me out a little bit, because it was if, like you said, like he hadn't been through any trauma. Like he was playing Guess Who. Like he was acting as if nothing had happened. Like everything was fine. He was happy with his life.
I honestly just think he is a bit on the crazy side. And basically, if you look at a picture of him now, he has got crazy eyes. I'm sorry, but I don't trust Burke. And
You even said that he was a gin and tonic drinker.
He looks like a gin and tonic drinker, okay?
Basically a psychopath.
And I don't trust him. I'm sorry, I honestly do not trust him. And I have a great theory about him, but we will get onto that later.
Yeah. No, like I said in the documentary, if you watch, I would really recommend this documentary. It is on YouTube, I had to find it. It's just the case of JonBenet Ramsey, but it really goes into detail about, it doesn't really discuss the theory of an intruder breaking in, but more about the parents and Burke's involvement in her murder. And it's really interesting, and I would highly recommend it, because it made me think, wow, like there's probably more about this than what
we see, basically.
Like what I found on the internet. And then watching that documentary, it like blew my mind about, wow, like the parents or Burke really could be more involved than what is let on.
Yeah. I reckon so as well.
Yeah. So following on from Burke, we'll now talk about JonBenet's parents, JonBenet Ramsey and Patsy Ramsey. So JonBenet Ramsey was born in 1943 in Lincoln, Nebraska. He graduated from Michigan State University with a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering. He also then served in the Navy in 1966 as a civil engineer corps officer. Also in 1966, JonBenet married a woman named Lucinda Pash, who he had 3 children with, called Beth, Melinda and John Andrew. They then divorced in 1978, and sadly, his eldest daughter Beth died in a car crash at aged 22 in 1992. He then married Patsy in 1980, when she was just 23, with whom he had 2 children, Burke and JonBenet. In 1989, John then formed 3 companies which merged to make a big computer services company called Access Graphics. In 1996, the year JonBenet was murdered, this company grossed $1 billion, and he was named Entrepreneur of the Year. So this kind of is why he's as wealthy as he is. Sadly, this was the year JonBenet was murdered, so he was temporarily replaced so nobody would bother him with business matters. Shortly after, the family relocated to Atlanta and the company was sold. Patsy Ramsey was born in 1956 in Parkersburg, West Virginia. She graduated from West Virginia University with a degree in journalism in 1978. However, Patsy was also a pageant queen herself, winning the Miss West Virginia beauty title in 1977. Sadly, not much is known about Patsy's early life, and 10 years after the murder of her daughter, in 2006, Patsy passed away from ovarian cancer at the age of 49, which is very young.
That is such a young age.
Yeah.
So let's now dive into some of the forensics. So on the day that she was found, a forensic team was sent to the house. As they initially believed that JonBenet was kidnapped, her bedroom was treated as a crime scene and was cordoned off. This was to prevent any evidence from being contaminated. However, this wasn't the case for the rest of the house. Friends, family and victim advocates arrived to show support. Frustratingly, visitors wiped down surfaces in the kitchen, possibly destroying any evidence. Also, once her body was carried from the basement upstairs, she was then moved again, contaminating evidence. Like I said earlier. And I feel like the police should know this.
Yeah, exactly.
I know this.
Especially a detective.
Yes! This is, honestly, this just infuriates me.
Also, sorry, just to add in, the police that were initially sent out from the 911 call, they weren't experienced in anything like this. Even though there were officers that were on that day that had experience in things like this, there were officers that had dealt with low-level crime that were being sent to this. How does that make any sense?
How is this a low-level crime?
I mean, kidnapping.
I like to think, though, like, if it was me in a situation, I'm pretty sure, like, nowadays, if there's a crime, they tend to, like, not allow you into the house until they've done their extensive search.
Yeah. Even...
So it's like, even the police team and the forensics, like, the police officers wouldn't be allowed in the house until the forensic team have been all suited and booted, kitted up, and gone in, done their search. Because, again, and then also anyone in the house, so anyone who's been in there, like parents, friends, family, detectives, they all have to give DNA, they all have to give fingerprints, they all have to give, like, a little bit of samples, like hair samples, to then rule them out, basically, to say, like, okay, we'll take these fingerprints, we'll take your fingerprints, and if they match, it's probably because, you know, you live here. So they'll basically say, okay, these fingerprints aren't part of the investigation. So even if they were in the house, they need to do all this to everyone that went into the house that day. And if they didn't do it, then that's just poor police work, in my opinion.
Yeah. I think there is maybe not throughout the whole investigation, but to start with, like, the initial police work in this was really bad. Like, you said last week, the first 24 hours...
It's crucial, especially in a child kidnapping.
Yeah. And I know they found the body, like, 8 hours after the call was made, but during those 8 hours, it just seems like...
Like, that police officer, Detective French... What's it?
Detective French. Yeah.
He should have went through that door, no matter what. Not exactly. I know, intruder. Like, no, you'd still go through the door.
Yeah, I know, exactly.
So, in 2003, there was a re-examination of evidence using new technology, and they found an unidentified man's DNA on JonBenet's underwear. This excludes the DNA of the Ramseys. Frustratingly, the DNA didn't match any profile that was in the database, which contained over 1.6 million DNA profiles. The ransom note, which was unusually long, was found on the kitchen staircase in the family home. It appeared to have very similar dialogue to the films Ruthless People, Ransom, Escape from New York, Speed and Dirty Harry. The police thought the note was staged due to having no fingerprints on it other than Patsy's, which is really weird. Like, if it's a ransom note and it's got her fingerprints on it and it was sent, it should have other people's fingerprints on it.
Exactly.
It was written using a pen and paper from inside the house. Okay, I'm really sorry, but if you were stealing a child, if you were kidnapping a child, you would not have time to write a 2.5 page letter saying they want all this money.
Yeah.
They would write it beforehand. Like, it would be like, you know, a big planned event.
Yeah.
They would just sit there going, and they would have to know, like, I don't have just pen and papers laying around in my house. Like, they would have to know where you keep your pen and paper.
So I did find that out. So I think the pen was underneath the phone, and I can't remember where the pad was.
But next to the phone. I feel like that's like, you know, them sort of olden days would do.
That's what I mean.
They'd
In the 1990s, it's probably...
people would phone and take little, like, notes down, wouldn't they? But surely there would be, like, fingerprints everywhere from this, but unless they wore gloves, obviously.
Yeah.
If they wore gloves, then either this person, if she was kidnapped, let's say, and if she was murdered by someone else, this person must be so bloody good at hiding any form of DNA. Like, he must be kitted up.
Yeah. Or leaving any evidence.
Yeah,
at
but
all,
he
really.
must be. He must know what he's doing.
Yeah. Experienced kidnapper.
This has to be, yeah. So the ransom note was then sent to a handwriting analysis, which ruled out JonBenet, and it ruled Patsy inconclusive. However, it was said it was highly unlikely to have been her.
So there is a lot of information in this case, and we've tried to shorten it for you, so we really only include the main details. But obviously, if you did want to go and research more into this, like I said, I really do recommend the case of JonBenet Ramsey on YouTube. So this is quite a shortened down version. But we're now moving on to the theories.
These are theories which, not that we like, oh yeah, these are our theories. These are the theories that have been around basically since she's gone missing.
So there were mainly two theories going round. One was the intruder theory, and the other was the family member theory. The family member theory was based off the fact that some of the evidence didn't match up with an intruder breaking in and committing this crime. For one, when officers arrived initially after that 911 call, they noticed that it snowed that day. However, there were no footprints outside until they arrived.
But just thinking about that one,
Fresh blanket of snow.
yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
I thought that.
could the intruder have come and then it carried on snowing, and then obviously, like, it would cover up the footprints? So
I know, yeah. I thought
that's
that.
hard to say.
I thought that. And also I couldn't find anywhere online about what time her death was, so obviously the police arrived 3 minutes after that 911 call. How much would it have snowed in that time for there to be no footprints? But then it depends on the intruder left.
Apparently she died, like, overnight, didn't she? So they probably didn't wake up. So it depends when it all happened, really.
Yeah.
Like, if there was, like, a good few hours between it, then maybe, it depends, because it snows quite heavy, doesn't it, in America? So.
Yeah. So
that one's hard. It's a bit...
Yeah. There were also cobwebs on the window that were intact when crime scene investigators initially went to the house, so on the basement window. So if an intruder broke in this way, they would have had to completely avoid all those cobwebs when climbing in. I kind of like that. I kind of like how they
know that. I like that.
Yeah, that they looked into that. Like, that's a really detailed shit to be looking into.
I wouldn't climb through the window if there was cobwebs there. That means there's a spider lurking around.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't, would you?
That would be a big no-no.
Another theory relates to the letter. So the intruder would have written the letter when they were in the house. In the documentary, investigators reenacted writing this letter, and it took them 21.5 minutes, which is a long time for the intruder to be in the house just writing a letter, let alone committing the actual crime.
And this depends if... Did the intruder go into the house and, like, see JonBenet sleeping and then think, oh, you know, I'll take her, write a ransom note? Or had he already got her... But then it's like, you wouldn't write a ransom note if you'd already killed her.
Yes.
And I don't think you can tame a 6-year-old girl who's probably panicking, crying for her mum and dad, for 21 and a half minutes without her making a single noise.
Exactly, yeah.
So this doesn't make sense.
No.
Like, it either had to be he's staring at her asleep whilst he's writing it, which is quite a long time.
Yeah, yeah. And this whole thing would have had to take place, like, obviously they were all asleep apparently. How would he have managed to keep her so quiet that no one would have woken up?
Yeah, for nearly 22 minutes.
Yeah, well, longer than that, because obviously that's just writing the letter, let alone actually murdering her.
I think if I was writing a ransom note, like, just on the spot, I wouldn't be able to do a full 2-page letter in 21 minutes.
Well, no, not even that, because that was them copying that letter, let alone thinking about what to write.
That's what I mean. So he was probably in there for ages.
Yeah.
And again, I'd be rambling on. I honestly would be. I just wouldn't be able to sit there off the top of my head and think. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it really, really doesn't make sense. The parents also made themselves look quite suspicious due to the fact that they weren't really cooperating with investigators during the investigation when answering the questions. So during interviews, they wouldn't really answer the questions. Like, they would sort of just play off the questions as I was watching it. And there was one where the interviewer asked JonBenet if they think this is a kidnapping, and in the interview you could see Patsy, she was sort of like shaking her head no, like, but John goes yes, like just straight away goes yes, this is a kidnapping, and then he sort of oversells the whole kidnapping thing, and as soon as he answered yes, Patsy then starts nodding. So it's really,
it's like they haven't got their story straight.
Exactly, yes.
And it's like, how do you know it's a kidnapping? Like, you don't know if it's a kidnapping, because if it's a kidnapping, she's still alive. So they don't know if she's dead or alive. So it might be someone's gone in the house, was robbing the house, JonBenet woke up, they've killed her, they've taken her body. So you don't know that it's a definite 100% kidnapping.
Well, I don't know when this interview was. I think it was after the body was discovered, which was the same day. So 8 hours.
Okay.
So
I'm sorry, but if you killed her the way that the pathologist has said she's killed, that's not a kidnapping. There was no way they were planning on taking her ever out of that house.
No, yeah.
So the second theory in this case is the intruder theory. The police followed leads for intruders due to the fact there was an unidentified bookmark left in the basement. Early persons of interest included Bill McReynolds, a neighbour of the family who played Santa Claus. What a job, sorry. Chris Wolfe, a local reporter whose girlfriend reported him as a suspect. And then we had Linda Hoffman, the family housekeeper, and Michael Halgoff, a man who died in an apparent suicide after JonBenet's death. That one's a little bit suspicious, isn't it? Because they do say that, like, sometimes people who, like, you know, commit crimes like this do end up, like, killing themselves later on.
Yeah, I mean, I do think if we're going with the intruder theory, he's probably the more likely suspect.
On the night of JonBenet's was killed, there had been 2 windows that were left slightly open to allow for the electrical cords outside for the Christmas lights. A broken basement window and 1 unlocked door. Again, what is with these people leaving doors unlocked? Every case, the door's unlocked. The door's unlocked.
I know. This was in 1990s as well.
And I mean, I start getting a little bit suspect right then.
Yeah.
Like, back in, like, maybe the 40s, I can understand people leaving their doors unlocked.
Yeah,
but in the 90s,
like, you'd have a bit more common sense, people. Come on.
because there's a lot more crime in the 90s.
Yeah.
The theory was that someone had entered the Ramsey household through the broken basement window, which again could be questioned due to the intact cobwebs, which I get. Like, there would be no cobwebs there.
Yeah.
And I'm sure if you, like, fair enough, the window might be broken. How broken are we talking? Are we talking broken enough to fit a person through, or would they still have to, like, move the window? Surely that would make noise.
Yeah, well, exactly. This is why this whole thing doesn't make sense, because someone in that house would have heard something. I mean, Burke in his interview said, "I sleep really, really deeply, so I can't hear anything."
He's 9.
Yeah.
He is 9 years old.
So, in 2006, a man named John Mark Carr, that's what he was known as at the time, was arrested in Bangkok in Thailand following a false confession to murdering JonBenet. He was a 41-year-old schoolteacher, and he claimed to have drugged, sexually assaulted and accidentally killed JonBenet. They did not find any evidence linking him to this crime. But, okay, so we are now moving on to what we think happened and our theories. Shannon?
So, I did say this to Abby earlier. I personally think Burke killed his sister in a rage, and his mum and dad covered it up because they didn't want to lose both of their children.
I think that's a very plausible theory. I really do.
Just because from like the interviews and stuff that he did, and even now, like, I know you shouldn't judge people, but he looks like, I don't know, he doesn't look like a trustworthy person. And I just think, like, you see it all the time. Like, parents will go to prison for their kids because they want to protect them. Like, any parents wants to protect their children. So I can see maybe a fight breaking out. But then again, the whole, like, Garrett way of her dying, could a 9-year-old boy do that?
Yes, that's a very good point.
I am definitely on the side of someone in that house killed her.
Yeah.
That I do not believe there was an intruder at all.
I don't. I just think that it would have been, if an intruder did enter the house, it would have been too noisy for anyone not to hear. But like you said, at the same time, like, if it was like when they said about him losing his temper over JonBenet eating pineapple. Okay, let's just drag my sister down to the basement, strangle her with a garrote. I don't know. Like, I am, like you said, I'm definitely on someone in the family, definitely has something to do with it. But whether Burke, a 9-year-old boy who was angry over his sister eating pineapple, I don't
I think that's a bit of an extreme. Like, unless he was really mentally ill, I don't see it happening. And like, even now, like, now today, it's not like he's ever been arrested or been in prison. So it's like, if he was that mentally ill, something else would have happened. You can't just blame his temper. You can't say, oh, he had a temper, so he must have murdered so, like,
her.
that is one of my theories, that it was him. But the other theory is, did one of the parents kill her? Because I have done a bit of research on this, and the 2019 edition on the United Nations website, just throwing that one in there, they said that the intimate parent or, like, family related homicides, 64% of them are actually from a female, and 36% of them are from, like, a male family member.
Wow, I would have thought that would have been higher, the male.
I don't know, because they do say, don't they, that, like, like, some parents, they get, like postnatal depression and stuff like that, and maybe did she have, like, did the mum Patsy have, like, some sort of mental illness, and maybe she just snapped one day, and maybe that's why in an interview she's like, no, it's not a kidnapping, because maybe she feels guilty about something that happened.
I do think the weird thing about this case is the fact that nothing else has happened within the family since. No other family dramas, like, no other crimes committed.
They do usually say, like, if your child dies at a young age, or I feel like something like this would break a family up. It's hard though. It's hard. I just honestly do not believe that someone broke into the house, sat there for about a good half hour, 40 minutes writing a ransom letter, while she was either asleep or tied up. Because you wouldn't write a ransom letter if she's already dead. You also wouldn't write a
ransom letter in the house. You would do that before.
Yeah, and you would plan this. This would be like a premeditated thing. They'd, like, watch her. They would watch the family for weeks to see their routine.
Yeah.
Because every family has a routine. So they would watch the routine. They would make sure, they would check when everyone goes to bed. Like, this isn't just they stumbled across and thought, oh, I'm going to go kidnap that kid. It would be so planned out. And also, I'm sorry, but you wouldn't do a ransom note if you take a garrote to a kidnapping. I'm sorry, I don't
I'm
believe
really
it.
intrigued as to whether that garret was already there or not, because I can't find anything about that.
Oh, I'm sorry, but if it was already there and it was families, arrest them now.
Yeah, there's definitely a red flag right there if they own a garret.
I don't understand though, because obviously in the whole story they said like in the basement there was like a locked door with like rooms inside that locked door. What the hell was going on in their basement?
I don't know, like, I don't think it's unusual to have a lock on.
Yeah,
but then the weird thing is it's on the inside. It's not on the outside.
That's what I mean.
It's on the inside.
I'm getting...
Like, why do you need to lock it from the inside?
Yeah, weird.
There's just so many odd things about this case. I don't really know which theory to go with. I've definitely ruled out the intruder theory. I just think there's way too much evidence for it to have gone on inside the house rather than someone breaking in from the outside. So I definitely think it's someone from the inside of the house. I just don't know who. I do have to sort of like steer towards Burke, mainly because I know he had a temper and the way he was just so happy and playful. Honestly, you need to watch this interview.
And I feel like maybe if he was younger, I'd be like, oh, okay, he's just being a child. But I feel like at 9 years old,
9
if
years
someone
old.
said to you, your sister's been murdered or your sister's died, you would be devastated unless you already knew it happened.
Mhm. Exactly. And apparently when JonBenet came along, he was a bit like, oh great, now all the attention's on her.
Especially like because obviously Patsy loved pageants, and
Yes.
obviously she kind of pushed that. I'm assuming she would push that onto her daughter.
Yeah.
And they probably spent like days on end and like weekends and maybe weekends away or weeks away doing these pageants. And maybe he was a bit pushed to the side, and his dad was probably always busy with work.
So that's another
So
thing
I
as
could
well.
get it.
If like Patsy loved doing all these things with JonBenet, like entering her into pageants, why would she feel the need to suddenly kill her daughter?
That's what I mean. Like, unless she didn't do it, she just was protecting the other's child. Because imagine one of your children getting dying, and your other child potentially being locked up for life.
Yes. 2 children that they would have lost. Yeah.
And I feel like the dad, like, he had this like multi-billion company. He obviously doesn't want anything like this getting out, would he?
Yeah.
So he would be like, we need to do a cover-up. I don't trust them. I really don't trust them.
I think, yeah, it's very odd. Let us know what you guys think.
There will be a poll again this week.
Yes, I don't know if anyone saw it because we didn't actually mention it in our last podcast, but we did put a poll on Spotify asking who you think was the most likely suspect in last week's case.
So I think we're going to do that on like most of
Yeah.
these, because obviously it's interesting to know like what you guys think.
Yeah, exactly. So in 2015, in an interview, JonBenet Ramsey said that the death of JonBenet and the cost of the case and investigation had drained his finances. He also claimed that because of how famous the case was and still is, he has struggled to find work.
After JonBenet's death, John met Beth Holloway, who is the mother of missing Natalie Holloway, which is another unsolved case. It is said that the two started dating. However, John claimed that the two were just friends who had respect and admiration for one another. He then relocated to Utah and met his third wife, Jan Russo, in 2011. They later married and relocated to Michigan.
And obviously...
This
Patsy,
man moves around.
He does, actually. He really does move a lot in this case. Obviously, Patsy passed away in 2006 from ovarian cancer. And Burke is just moving on with his life. As he said in his interview when he was 9 years old, he's just getting on with his life. So yeah, that is really about it for today's case. Obviously, that is a shortened down story of it. There is more information out there, especially on the documentary on YouTube. There is also a documentary on Netflix called Casting JonBenet, I think it's called. I didn't watch that because it was mainly to do with actors and what they think happened. Like I said, I would definitely recommend the documentary on YouTube. But yeah, I think that's about it. We hope you enjoyed the
I think
case.
it's Burke. The family's weird, and the dad's moving mad.
Moving mad. He did move around a lot. I know this is the third episode now where we've spoken about a murdered child.
And next week is probably going to be the same. So I do apologise. I'm actually going to try and find a bit of a nicer case, I reckon.
Yeah. Why are we constantly talking about children?
Because I feel like a lot of child murders are unsolved.
Yeah, so
Like usually, and like nowadays as well. There's so much evidence. There's so many, like, the government are watching you everywhere you go. Like, there's CCTV everywhere. They can track your phones. Like, it's very, very hard to try and get away from murder nowadays.
It is, yeah.
So I just feel like if you're going to try and do a murder, don't bother, because they probably will catch you. And I just feel like serial killers just really aren't a thing anymore.
There we go for all you future serial killers out there. Shannon has spoken.
Yeah, don't do it. Or if you're going to do it, do one, move abroad, do another one, move abroad. I just don't know how you'd do it, because I just feel like
I'm kind of worried
there
now
would
you're
be
giving advice to future serial killers.
I'm just saying, it's just impossible. You will get caught.
Yeah.
Like, you don't hear about serial killers anymore. Like,
No,
obviously back
no,
in the
that's
day, you
true, you
had
don't.
John Wayne Gacy, you had Ted Bundy.
Yeah.
You had all these serial killers. So, well, we hope you enjoyed, and we hope you found this week's case very interesting. I know that we did.
Yes.
And hopefully you come back next week for another case at the Mystery Room.
Yes. We are not only just on Spotify anymore, we are now on Amazon Music. So
And
you can listen to
Samsung.
us on Alexa.
Oh my god, yes!
I know, I realised that.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
Samson Podcasts.
Yes. Yes. And
You can find us now on Facebook, because there is a Facebook page. So come and join in and share your thoughts on there.
This is
And
exciting.
obviously we are still on the Instagram
Yeah.
at the Mystery Room, the pod.
yes. If you sign up to our Patreon as well, you do get access to these episodes a day early.
So why wouldn't you sign up to hear
Exactly.
our voices?
Exactly. I know we sound so beautiful at the moment with our ill voices.
I feel like we started this podcast at a completely wrong time,
I know.
because we are literally I was ill, pretty much lost my voice, and now you're ill.
I know, it's great, it's great. Maybe people will enjoy it, you know. Maybe they can relate. If you're ill as well, don't worry.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah. But yeah, we hope to see you next week with a case that doesn't involve children. But have a lovely weekend.
And we will see you next week, and I'm going to drink wine next week.
Oh, yes.
I just feel like gin's a very summery drink, and
It is. Yes.
we're not having red either.
Oh.
We're going to have something nice. I'll probably say it tastes like petrol fluid, but we're here for it.
We are.
Ooh, Prosecco, I think.
Oh, maybe that could be a 10th episode thing. It's like a
Okay, yeah.
celebration thing, you know.
Oh, yeah, we are pushing the boat out, Prosecco.
I know, we are. Well,
I feel like once we get 150 people on Patreon, I'll buy a bottle of champagne.
oh,
Even if I get one person on Patreon, I'll buy a bottle of champagne.
I'm holding you to that. I'll remind you, don't worry. Okay, well, we shall see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.